Hello and welcome to Microsoft Hates Greg. My name is Greg Deckler, and today we're going to be talking about this enhanced DAX time intelligence preview feature that was released. And I understand I made a recent video where I was like, "This is the last time I'm talking about this stupid thing," but I realized I have more to say on this, and I think there's maybe been some confusion. And really, what motivated this was I was on with the Vancouver user group, Power BI user group, and I was giving this presentation, DAX counterculture, and one of the and this is it's a updated deck. It goes into a lot of other additional things than when I did this for Enterprise DNA a few years back. But one of the things that hasn't changed is that don't use TI functions, right? And you can see some of this stuff here. And I was addressing I had, of course I had to update and address this for this preview feature where they've fixed it so that now, you can handle fiscal calendars and you can handle weeks, right? Um, so they fixed that, right? Because those were what was wrong with TI functions, except that wasn't even beginning to scratch the surface of what's wrong with the TI functions in DAX, in my opinion. Those were just the two most obvious things that TI functions in DAX couldn't do was fiscal calendars and weeks. And there was no need to ever go any deeper into the criticisms of them because then that's just bullying at that point, right? You're just piling on, right? So I think when everybody talks about the problems with the DAX TI functions, the critics of it, like myself and others, right? We would only ever like mention those two because what else do you need to mention at that point? If it can't handle fiscal calendars and it can't handle weeks, then it's obviously worthless to a large degree, right? But there's more to it than that. But I think those are the only things that the critics mentioned. So I think Microsoft felt compelled to fix it, but I don't think anybody was. That wasn't the purpose of the criticism. Microsoft. We weren't criticizing it so that you would fix it. We were just pointing out why they're stupid to use. Okay, and that there's a better way to do it, which is offsets, which we'll get into. So yeah, I mean, if you actually look out in the ideas forum, anything related to week calculations or fiscal calendars or anything in terms of fixing time intelligence functions, none of them have like over 400 votes. They're all like the most that any of them have are in like the 300 vote range, which but this is what Microsoft chose to spend their development time doing, which just means that your vote doesn't matter, right? When you vote on these ideas, the ideas exchange it's just window dressing. It bears no bearing on anything that Microsoft is going to actually do because they spend their time and their development time doing stupid things like enhancing time intelligence, right? And I'll get into why it's just so stupid, okay? Um, so the crazy thing about this, what floors me about this whole thing is that in order to use DAX time intelligence to begin with, this enhanced DAX time intelligence, you already have to have a date table that has the information that you need in it, right? And anybody that runs a fiscal calendar and uses Power BI, right, already has their date table set up and they already use offsets, right, in order to make their time intelligence calculations or date intelligence calculations, right? Because they need weeks and they need an easy way of doing it in terms of their fiscal calendar, which is not your standard calendar, right? So they've already solved the problem, and in fact, this problem has been solved. This goes far beyond Power BI. Power BI has been around for a decade now, right? This problem of date intelligence calculations, right? Time intelligence calculations predates Power BI by decades. Okay, it goes. I mean, back in the '90s, when when I was first started in consulting, I would see people's date tables, and they would have not just what is it in DAX auto time intelligence like 5 columns, and in this new calendar system they have like 15 columns. No, man, these date tables, right, had dozens upon dozens, if not hundreds of columns in them. Okay. It's obviously, in looking at them that some very smart people had thought down and thought way too freaking much about date calculations in that and how you would do that in a data warehousing situation. And I'm sure that even dates back, even more decades to the '70s, et cetera, when data warehousing was invented, right? So So what you're saying with this, what Microsoft is saying with this is like, so I already have solved this problem with the fiscal calendars. Anybody that's using Power BI with the fiscal calendar, anything like that, has already solved this. It probably involves offsets because that's how it's been done for decades, right? It far outside of Power BI, just in business intelligence in general, right? That's how it's been done. Sequential numbers and offsets generally is what I see out there. Um, but then I'm gonna have to take extra steps to layer on top of it, which again, the setup for this is I want to stick a fork in my eye just doing it. I mean, basically what you're gonna have to do is memorize this table. So if you don't memorize this table, you are lost, okay, in terms of trying to set up a calendar within Power BI, right? It's a miserable experience, right? And again, anybody that needs like to be able to do time intelligence calculations with weeks and with fiscal years and that sort of stuff, right, is probably using Melissa DeCourte's Power Query M function. I'll link it in the description, right? And it creates a far more robust date table, right? So here we go. So this is the date table that Melissa DeCourte has, and it has 60 columns in it. Okay, and it's not nearly as sophisticated as some of the date tables that I've seen out there in industry, right? Where it has, this has the offsets. A lot of times you'll see a Julian date, you'll have sequential week, you'll have, sequential year, right? Where it's just 2024 is year one, 2025 is year two, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you'll have the sequential stuff in addition to the offsets. In addition, if you want to know the format of that date in 12 different countries, right? Those are all there, both short, long, right? The date formats. If you want to know the name of a month or the name of a weekday in 15 different languages, they're all right there in the date table, right? So these date tables have grown up to be very sophisticated, and it's Microsoft coming out with like a 5-column date table for their auto time intelligence and a 15-column date table for this enhanced time. That's a joke. It's a joke, right? It is. There's so much better, more flexible, and faster ways of doing these calculations. But it doesn't stop there, right? So here's what I presented at the Vancouver, and this is what really got me thinking about it. So cases suitable for DAX time intelligence, right? You have year, you have quarter, you have month, you have week now, which is preview, and you have day. All right, so basically 5 cases where you can use DAX time intelligence. Okay, cases not suitable for DAX time intelligence. Anything that's sub-day period, right? Shifts, think about how common shifts are. Well, the DAX time intelligence functions will not allow you to compare one shift to another, right? There's no help in that regard, okay? Fortnight. Now, you might be thinking about, Greg, this isn't the 1800s. Who the hell uses fortnights? Well, you'd be surprised outside of the US, especially like in Australia and in certain places in the UK, right? Fortnight's pretty common. And in fact, even if you're in the US and you get paid every 2 weeks, that's a fortnight, okay? You're getting paid every 14 days, right? So they're far more common than what you think they are. And our time intelligence function is going to help you with fortnights? Hell no, right? There's in a lot of places, there's like the 10-day in Chinese, 10 days basically in China. You have sprints in agile development, right? You have another payroll thing. A lot of places, some places they get paid on the 14th and the 28th or on the 15th and the 30th, right? They get paid every twice a month, essentially. That's why I've seen it done. Now, then you get into stuff like seasons. Seasons tend to be very, very, very important to things like retailers and other people, right? And this is the one that's the kicker to me. Like, there's an entire industry called education, the education industry, in which time intelligence functions in DAX are worthless because everything in that industry revolves around semesters, trimesters, or academic quarters, right? And academic quarters are like 10 weeks. So useless in the entire education industry, DAX time intelligence functions, right? It doesn't matter that they've added fiscal years and that they finally added weeks after literally a decade, right? This list goes on and on, right? Decades, useless. Century, useless. Millenniums, useless. Anything involving eras, epochs, or epochs, if you're in the UK, eons, like a bunch of stuff involving different calendars, right? So sabbatical every 7 years, all of this stuff, right? Time intelligence functions will not help you with any of this, right? Campaign cycles for marketing, project phases, right? Milestones, all that sort of stuff. Again, sprints, right? So it's the amount of things that DAX TI functions can handle 5 instances of 5 different time periods, basically, right? Whereas offsets can handle all of these, including these, right? So why in the hell would you learn something that is the exception versus the rule? Eventually, is what it boils down to. Like if there's all these places where time intelligence isn't going to help you, but offsets are perfect, work perfectly well on how it's been done for decades, right? Why in the hell would you learn this specialized method of these DAX time intelligence functions, which they are not easy, right? They regularly top the list of what are the hardest things that to learn in DAX, and you'll see a bunch of it will be calculate and time intelligence, right? They're always up there. I can tell you for a fact on the community forums, time intelligence functions aren't intuitive to people, right? New users are on there they're like bewildered because they're trying to do something simple around a date calculation, and they use the time intelligence functions and they get some wacky answer. And it's because they're not intuitive to use. Like once you kind of learn them and kind of learn their kind of weird way that they operate, they, they're reasonably, you can reasonably use them, right? But for new users to DAX, it's a mystery, right? Versus offsets make complete sense. Oh, if I want last year, I just filter my table where the year offset is -1 and bingo, bango, bongo, I'm done, right? Versus, oh, I need to use calculate and then parallel period and then, well, it's like, you got to be kidding me. So anyway, the problems with DAX TI functions go far beyond just the fact that they didn't support fiscal calendars and that they didn't support weeks. Those were just the 2 most obvious things, and there was no reason to go any further than that. But now that they fixed them, again, I don't know why they're spending cycles on it, because they didn't fix all the other things that are wrong with DAX time intelligence functions. Another one that I bring up sometimes is like if you're trying to do a year-to-date calculation. Well, in a lot of places, year-to-date, you don't include today versus, but guess what? Your DAX time intelligence functions, they're going to include today, right? And you don't include today because it's not a full day. And so comparing year to date with today in it, which is not a full day, to year to date last year, where there is a full day, that's a no-no. That's apples to oranges comparison, that kind of stuff. So, but all these assumptions are baked into DAX time intelligence functions, and they don't apply in so many different circumstances. So they're rigid, they're inflexible, and if the design was to make these things easy to use, it failed miserably, like miserably. Okay, so there it is. There's my rant on this time intelligence and the enhanced time intelligence, right? So why I think they're useless, because there's so many circumstances in which they are useless. They can't handle like simple date periods that are very common out there in industry, right? They can't handle them. So why learn them at all? To be honest, just learn how to do it with offsets and you're golden. It doesn't matter what the time period is that you're trying to calculate, offsets will work for you. So there you have it. That's all I had for this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.